Hi there, welcome to Fantasy Hub. I'm Mia, your storyteller. Today's story is filled with heartache, discovery, and a twist you won't see coming. So let's begin.
The ice cream line stretched endlessly before her, a serpent of restless bodies seeking refuge from the merciless heat. Marina shifted uncomfortably, her linen blouse clinging to her skin despite the shade of the red-striped awning. Around her, teenagers laughed with the careless abandon of youth. Their voices cutting through the humid air like church bells on a Sunday morning dot. She felt ancient among them, out of place. A woman approaching 50, standing in line for ice cream. Like a child. The heat does strange things to us all, doesn't it? The voice came from behind her, melodious and tinged with an accent she couldn't quite place. Marina turned to find herself, looking into eyes the color of storm clouds, gray with flecks of silver that seemed to dance in the afternoon light. The young woman who had spoken paused in otherworldly beauty, her dark hair pulled back in an elegant chignon that revealed the graceful curve of her neck. "I'm sorry," Marina managed, suddenly aware of how her voice trembled slightly. The stranger smiled, and Marina felt something shift deep within her chest, like tectonic plates relating after eons of stillness. "I said the heat makes us all do things we wouldn't normally do, like stand in line for ice cream at 3 in the afternoon, with a bunch of teenagers." Marina found herself laughing, a sound that surprised her with its genuine warmth. "You're absolutely right. I should be in my office, helping clients work through their problems. Instead, I'm here, melting alongside Vanilla Soft Serve, a therapist." The young woman's eyebrows arched with interest. "Hypnotherapist, actually. Marina Phillips." She extended her hand, noting how it trembled ever so slightly as the stranger took it. "Julia Winters. And what a delicious irony, a hypnotherapist who's clearly under some kind of spell herself." The touch of Julia's fingers sent an electric current up Marina's arm, a sensation she hadn't felt in how many years. Too many to count. She pulled her hand back, perhaps too quickly, and turned toward the front of the line where salvation awaited. In frozen form. But Julia wasn't finished casting her spell. "You know," Julia said, stepping closer so Marina could catch the faint scent of jasmine and something indefinably magical. "I believe in signs. In moments when the universe orchestrates meetings that are meant to happen." Marina's professional mind kicked in, the part of her trained to analyze and dissect. "And what makes you think this is one of those moments?" Julia's smile was enigmatic. "Because in 30 seconds, you're going to order vanilla and I'm going to order chocolate. And then I'm going to do something that will change both our afternoons." The prophecy proved accurate. Marina ordered vanilla, Julia ordered chocolate, and as they stepped away from the counter, Julia did indeed do something unexpected. She held out her cone. "Trade with me," she said simply. "I'm sorry, trade? You wanted chocolate. I could see it in your eyes. You ordered vanilla because it's safe, because it's what you always order, but today isn't about safe, is it?" Marina stared at the offered cone, chocolate ice cream already beginning to drip in the heat. Such a small gesture, yet it felt monumental. Revolutionary, even. She made the trade. "There," Julia said, taking a delicate lick of the vanilla. "Now we've both tasted something new." They found themselves sharing a small table in the shade, the sounds of the city creating a symphony around them. Marina watched, mesmerized, as Julia ate her ice cream with the focused attention of a meditation practice, her tongue darting out to catch wayward drips with an unconscious sensuality that made Marina's breath catch. "So what do you do when you're not predicting strangers' ice cream preferences?" Marina asked, desperate to break the spell that seemed to be weaving itself around her. Julia's eyes sparkled with mischief. "I'm a magician. Excuse me?" "Stage magic, illusion, the art of making. People believe in impossible things." Julia leaned forward conspiratorially. "I have a show tonight at the Riverside Theater. Small venue, intimate crowd. Would you like to come?" Marina's practical mind immediately began cataloging reasons why this was a terrible idea. Shut it now. This woman. The age difference was significant. Julia couldn't be older than 25 at most. She had clients to prepare for, bills to pay, a reputation to maintain. That's something deeper, something that had been dormant for far too long. Whispered a single word. "Yes, yes," Marina heard herself say aloud. "I'd like that very much." Asterisk, the Riverside Theater was indeed intimate, perhaps 60 seats arranged in a horseshoe round, a small stage draped in midnight blue velvet. Marina arrived early, choosing a seat in the third row where she could observe without being too conspicuous. The audience was eclectic, young couples holding hands, elderly theater enthusiasts, a few individuals like herself who seemed to be flying solo into uncharted territory. When the lights dimmed and Julia stepped onto the stage, Marina's breath caught in her throat. Gone was the casual young woman from the ice cream stand. In her place stood a sorceress in a fitted black dress that hugged her curves like liquid shadow, her hair now flowing loose around her shoulders like dark water. Magic, Julia began, her voice carrying easily through the intimate space, is not about tricking the eye. It's about opening the heart to possibilities we've forgotten how to believe in. For the next hour, Marina watched spellbound as Julia made flowers appear from thin air, caused cards to dance across the stage without touch, and performed feats that defied logic. But it wasn't the tricks themselves that captivated Marina. It was Julia's presence, the way she moved with fluid grace, the intensity in her eyes when she looked directly at Marina during certain illusions. And Julia did look at her, often, in ways that made Marina's skin flush and her pulse quicken. The final trick involved calling an audience member onto the stage. Marina's heart hammered against her ribs when Julia's gaze found hers. "You," Julia said, pointing directly at her. "The woman in the blue blouse, would you join me?" Marina shook her head, but the audience was already applauding, encouraging her. She found herself rising, walking toward the stage on legs that felt disconnected from her body. On stage, under the warm lights and Julia's intense gaze, Marina felt exposed and exhilarated in equal measure. "What's your name?" Julia asked, though. They both knew she already had the answer. Marina. Marina. A beautiful name for a beautiful woman. Julia's voice was lower now, intimate, despoteff audience watching. "I want you to think of something you've always wanted that never allowed yourself to have. Can you do that for me?" Marina's mind immediately went to forbidden territories, to desires she'd buried under years of professional propriety and social expectations. She nodded, not trusting her voice. "Hold that thought close," Julia whispered, stepping nearer until Marina could feel the heat radiating from her body. "Now, I want you to close your eyes and trust me completely." Marina's eyes fluttered shut, and she felt Julia's hands, warm, gentle, surprisingly strong, guide her to a chair that hadn't been there moments before. "Keep thinking about that desire," Julia murmured close to her ear, so softly only Marina could hear. Because sometimes magic happens when we're brave enough to want what we want. The illusion that followed involved Marina somehow finding herself inside a large box, then emerging from a completely different location on the stage to thunderous applause. But the real magic had happened in those whispered moments, in the feeling of Julia's hands guiding her, and promise implicit in those gray eyes. As the audience filtered out, Marina lingered, unsure of protocol. Should she leave? Wait? Her social skills felt rusty, unused. "Marina." Julia appeared beside her, now wearing jeans and a simple white t-shirt, somehow been more beautiful in her casual transformation. "Thank you for trusting me up there. Thank you for, well, for everything. The show was incredible." "Walk with Emmy." Julia gestured toward the theater's exit. "There's a coffee shop around Theckerner that stays open late, unless you have somewhere you need to be." Marina thought of her empty apartment, her cat, the novel she'd been trying to finish for months. "No," she said, "know where I need to be." The coffee shop was a haven of warmth and intimacy, with exposed brick walls lined with local art and the gentle hum of quiet conversation. They found a corner table beneath a painting of a women dancing, their forms intertwined in ways that made Marina's cheeks warm. "So," Julia said, wrapping her hands around her mug of chamomile tea, "tell me about your work. What drew you to hypnotherapy?" Marina settled back in her chair, grateful for familiar territory. "I've always been fascinated by the mind's power to heal itself. Hypnotherapy is just guided meditation, really, helping people access parts of themselves they've forgotten or buried, like desires they've never allowed themselves to have." The reference to the magic show made Marina's pulse quicken. "Sometimes, yes. And what about you, Marina? What desires have you buried?" The question hung between them like incense, heavy and intoxicating. Marina found herself studying Julia's face, the high cheekbones, the full lips, the eyes that seemed to see straight through her carefully constructed defenses. "I think," Marina said carefully, "that some desires are buried for good reason." Julia leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Or maybe they're just waiting for the right person to help unearth them." The air between them seemed to shimmer with possibility. Marina felt as though she were standing on the edge of a cliff, the ground solid behind her, unknown depths ahead. Julia, she began, then stopped. What was she trying to say? That this was dangerous? That the 26-year age difference between them was insurmountable? That she'd never felt the skin of magnetic pull toward another woman before? How old are you? She asked instead, 22. Julia's answer was matter of fact, no shame or defensiveness. And you're 48, which means you've lived enough life to know that connection like this doesn't happen often. Marina's breath caught. How did you? I'm a magician, remember? I notice things. The way you hold yourself like someone who spent decades learning to be careful. The slight lines around your eyes that speak of both wisdom and sadness. The way you touch your wedding ring finger, even though there's no ring there anymore. Marina's hand stilled, caught in the unconscious gesture. Divorced? Julia asked gently. 5 years ago. He said I was distant, emotionally unavailable. Marina laughed bitterly. Turns out he was right, just not in the way he thought. And what way was that? Marina took a deep breath, feeling as though she were about to confess to a priest. I think I was unavailable to him because I was waiting for someone else. Someone I didn't even know existed. The words hung between them, honest and raw. Julia reached across the table and covered Marina's hand with her own. Maybe you weren't waiting, she said softly. Maybe you were just becoming ready. Asterisk, they began meeting for coffee 3 times a week. Professional consultation, Marina told herself initially. Julia was interested in incorporating hypnotic techniques into her performances, and Marina was curious about the psychology of stage magic. It was a legitimate professional exchange, except. It wasn't it was Julia's laugh when Marina told stories about her most unusual clients. It was the way Julia's eyes lit up when she described a new illusion she was working on. It was the increasing glinted conversations that stretched late into the evening, touching on everything from childhood dreams to philosophical questions about the nature of reality. It was the way Marina found herself thinking about Julia at odd moments throughout the day, during client sessions, while grocery shopping, in the quiet moments before sleep when her guard was down and her heart could whisper truths her mind refused to acknowledge. 3 weeks after the magic show, Julia asked Marina to her apartment to see a new trick she was developing. It's not quite ready for an audience, Julia explained as they climbed the stairs to her second-floor walk-up. But I'd value your professional opinion about the psychological aspects. Marina's heart hammered as Julia unlocked the door and led her into a space that was exactly what she'd expected. Eclectic, artistic, alive with color and creative energy. Silk scarves hung from the ceiling like prayer flags. Books on psychology and mysticism filled floor-to-ceiling shelves, and crystals caught the late afternoon light from tall windows. This is beautiful, Marina said, meaning it. Thank you. Wine? Julia moved toward a small kitchen visible through an archway. Please. Marina wandered the living room, examining the carefully curated collection of art and artifacts. A tarot deck lay scattered on a low table, the cards depicting scenes of transformation and rebirth. Photos showed Julia performing on various stages, her face radiant with the joy of her craft. Here we are. Julia returned with 2 glasses of red wine, the color deep as garnets. They sat on the couch, closer than they'd ever been in the coffee shop's public space. Marina could smell Julia's perfume, could see the pulse beating in her throat, could feel the heat radiating from her skin. So, Marina said, her voice slightly hoarse. The new trick? Julia smiled, expression both mysterious and tender. The trick is this. How do you make Simeon admit they want something they're afraid to want? Marina's wine glass paused halfway to her lips. That's not really a magic trick, isn't it? The most powerful magic is making the impossible seem possible. Making Simeon believe they can have what they never thought they deserved. Julia set down her wine and turned to face Marina fully. I've been watching you for weeks, Marina. The way you light up when you talk about things that excite you, then immediately dim as if you've remembered you're not allowed to feel that much joy. The way you touch my hand when you laugh, then pull away as if you've been burned. The way you look at me when y'all think I'm not watching. Marina's heart felt as though it might explode from her chest. Julia, I know you feel it too. This pull between us. This recognition. It's not that simple, Marina whispered. Why not? Julia's hand found Marina's cheek, her touch feather-light. Because I'm younger? Because we're both women? Because you're scared? All of those things, Marina admitted, her voice breaking slightly. What if I told you that none of those things matter as much as this moment? This choice? Julia's face was inches from hers now. So close Marina could see the gold flecks in those storm gray eyes, could feel Julia's breath against her lips. What choice? Marina whispered. The choice to stop hiding from what you want. The choice to trust that maybe, just maybe, the universe brought us together for a reason. And then Julia kissed her dot. It was gentle at first, tentative, giving Marina every opportunity to pull away. But as Marina's lips parted under Julia's, as her hands found their way to Julia's face, the kiss deepened into something that felt like coming home and setting off on an adventure simultaneously. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Marina felt as though her entire world had shifted on its axis. Oh God, she whispered. What are we doing? We're being brave, Julia said simply. We're choosing magic over fear. What followed was a courtship unlike any Marina had ever experienced. Julia wooed her with small magics, flowers that appeared in Marina's office, love notes that materialized in her coat pockets, tiny illusions performed just for her during their increasingly frequent dinners together, but the real magic was emotional. Julia saw her, truly saw her, in ways Marina had never been seen before. She celebrated Marina's intelligence, encouraged her professional ambitions, and slowly, patiently, helped her excavate the passionate woman buried beneath years of careful property. Their first night together came 6 weeks after that initial kiss, and it was Julia who suggested they take things slowly. I want to savor this, she whispered against Marina's temple as they lay entwined on Marina's sofa, wine glasses forgotten on the coffee table. I want to memorize every moment. Marina had never made love with another woman before, had never even seriously considered it. But with Julia, it felt as natural as breathing, as inevitable as sunrise. Julia's hands were gentle but confident, mapping Marina's body like a beloved landscape, drawing responses from her that she didn't know she was capable of. Afterward, as they lay in Marina's bed watching the city lights paint patterns on the ceiling, Marina felt fundamentally changed. No regrets? Julia asked softly, her fingers tracing lazy patterns on Marina's bare shoulder. None, Marina said, and was surprised to find she meant it completely. Asterisk, the first time Marina caught one of her professional colleagues looking at her strangely was at App Psychology Conference months into her relationship with Julia. Dr. Patricia Hendricks, a woman Marina had known for 15 years, gave her a look that was equal parts curiosity and judgment. Marina, darling, Patricia said, cornering her by the refreshment table. I heard the most interesting thing about you recently. Marina's blood turned to ice water. Oh? Someone saw you at the theater district quite frequently. With a much younger woman, very attractive, apparently. Patricia's smile was sharp as broken glass. New client? Something like that, Marina replied carefully, but the rumors had begun. They spread through the small world of therapeutic professionals like wildfire. Marina found herself the subject of whispered conversations that stopped when she entered rooms, off meaningful glances exchanged between colleagues, of a gradual cooling in professional affections she'd spent years building. The final blow came when Dr. James Morton, the director of the clinic where Marina rented office space, called her in for a private meeting. Marina, he said, his voice carefully neutral, I've been hearing some concerns from other tenants about your personal life. Marina's spine stiffened. My personal life is exactly that. Personal? Of course, of course. But you understand that in our profession, appearances matter, particularly when there are questions about appropriateness. Appropriateness? The age difference, Marina. It raises questions about judgment, about professional-bendies. Marina felt something cold and hard settle in her stomach. Are you asking me to end my relationship? I'm asking you to consider how your choices affect not just you, but this entire practice, our reputation. That night, Marina sat in her apartment, staring at her phone, Julia's contact information glowing in the screen. She could end it. She could choose her career, her reputation, the safe path she had walked for 48 years. Her finger hovered over Julia's number. Asterisk. You're going to break up with me. Julia's voice was calm, but Marina could see the pain flickering behind her eyes as she opened at her apartment door. How did you? It's written all over your face. Someone got to you, made you feel ashamed of what we have. Marina stepped inside, her heart breaking with every breath. Julia, you don't understand. My career, my reputation, your fear, Julia. Interrupted. That's what this is really about. Not your career. Your fear of what people will think, of stepping outside the narrow line society has drawn for women like you. Women like me? Women who've spent their whole lives being good, following rules, making sure everyone else is comfortable with their choices. Julia's voice rose slightly, passion bleeding through her careful control. When do you get to be happy, Marina? When do you get to choose what you want instead of what you think you should want? Marina sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. Julia sat beside her, her voice gentling. I know you love me. I can see it in your eyes, feel it in your touch. The question is whether you love me enough to fight for us. Of course I love you, Marina whispered. That's why this is so hard. No, Julia said firmly. That's why this should be easy. Asterisk for 3 days, Marina didn't answer Julia's calls. She went through the motions of her life like a sleepwalker, seeing clients, eating meals she couldn't taste, lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, and feeling as though she were slowly dying from the inside out. On the 4th day, her client, Mrs. Chen, a 70-year-old widow, said something that stopped Marina cold. Dr. Phillips, Mrs. Chen said as their session was ending, forgive me for saying so, but you seem diminished recently, as though you've lost something precious. Marina looked at this brave woman who'd come to therapy to work through her grief, who was building her life at an age when many people simply accepted what they had. Mrs. Chen, Marina said slowly, what would you do if you had a chance at love again, but Tavarian told you it was wrong? Inappropriate? Mrs. Chen smiled, her eyes twinkling. Dr. Phillips, I've buried 2 husbands and lived with great depression. I've learned that life is far too short to waste on other people's opinions about who we should love. That evening, Marina found herself standing outside the Riverside Theater. Julia's show was about to begin, and the lobby was filled with the excited chatter of audience members filing in. Marina bought a ticket and found herself in the same seat she'd occupied months ago, when her life had still made sense. Julia took the stage in a dress of deep emerald green, her hair swept up to reveal the elegant curve of her neck. She was luminous, magnetic, every inch the sorceress Marina had fallen in love with, but something was different. There was a sadness in Julia's performance, a subdued quality to her usual radiant energy. She moved through her illusions flawlessly, but Marina could see the effort it took, could recognize the mask of professionalism hiding deeper pain. When Julia called for a volunteer from the audience, her eyes swept the room without stopping at Marina's seat. She chose someone else, a young man who laughed nervously as Julia egged him through a card trick that had the audience gasping in amazement. As the show ended and the audience applauded, Julia's gaze finally found Marina's. For a moment, their eyes held across the distance, and Marina saw everything she'd thrown away reflected back at her: love, hope, the possibility of a future filled with magic and joy and authentic connection. Then Julia looked away, and Marina felt the last piece of her heart break. Asterisk Marina waited in the alley behind the theater, the same place where she'd first walked with Julia months ago. She watched the audience members filter out, chattering excitedly about the show, until finally, the stage door opened and Julia emerged, looking tired and fragile in the harsh light of the security lamp. Marina, Julia's voice was carefully neutral. I didn't expect to see you. I made a mistake, Marina said simply. The biggest mistake of my life. Julia's composure cracked slightly. Did you? I let fear make my choices. I let other people's opinions matter more than my own happiness, more than our happiness. And what's changed? Marina stepped closer, her heart hammering, but her voice steady. I realized that I've spent my whole life trying to be the person everyone else wanted me to be. The good daughter, the dutiful wife, the respectable professional. And in all that time, I never once asked myself who I wanted to be. And who is that? Someone brave enough to love you. Someone willing to build a life that's real instead of safe. Someone who chooses magic over fear. Julia's eyes filled with tears. Marina, I quit the clinic, Marina said. I'm opening my own practice. And I don't care what anyone says about our age difference, about anything except the fact that I love you more than I ever thought it was possible to love another person. Julia closed the distance between them, her hands framing Marina's face. Are you sure? Because I can't do this again. I can't lose you twice. You won't lose me, Marina promised. Never again. The kiss they shared in that alley tasted of salt. Tears and new beginnings, of courage chosen over comfort, of love finally allowed to bloom without shame or apology. 1 year later, Marina stood in the wings of a much larger theater, watching Julia command the stage before an audience of 300. The show was a collaboration they'd developed at Edgar, the healing arts, combining Julia's illusions with Marina's understanding of the mind's capacity for transformation. Tonight was special. Julia had been building towards something for weeks, perfecting a new illusion that she'd kept secret even from Marina. As the show reached its crescendo, Julia called Marina onto the stage, just as she had that first night. "Ladies and gentlemen," Julia announced, her voice carrying easily through the theater, "magic is about making the impossible possible. It's about believing in things that logic tells us can't exist. Love, transformation, the power of two souls to recognize each other. Across any distance, any difference, any obstacle." Marina stood beside her, no longer nervous under the bright lights, no longer worried about what people might think. She was exactly where she belonged. "Marina," Julia said, turning to face her, "you taught me that the greatest magic isn't in making something appear or disappear. It's in having the courage to show up as exactly who you are, in loving without reservation, in choosing each other again and again, every single day." Julia dropped to one knee, and Marina's hands flew to her mouth as the audience gasped in collective surprise. "You said yes to coffee, to trust, to love, to building a life together that's messier and more beautiful than either of us ever imagined possible." Julia pulled out a small velvet box, her eyes shining with tears and joy. "Will you say yes to forever?" Marina looked out at the audience, at the faces watching their love story unfold. Some were smiling, some were crying, and yes, some looked disapproving or confused. But for the first time in her life, their opinions didn't matter. What mattered was this moment, this choice. This woman woe had taught her that love was the greatest magic of all. "Yes," Marina said, her voice carrying clearly through the theater. "Yes to all of it. Yes to you. Yes to us. Yes to the magic of living fully, loving completely, and never, ever apologizing for the truth of who we are." As Julia slipped the ring onto Marina's finger, the audience erupted in applause. But Marina heard only the beating of her own heart. Strong and steady, and finally, completely free, the old narrator's voice grows soft with reverence, dear ones, as this tale draws to its close. "For you see, true love asks not for our perfection, but for our courage. It asks not that we be the same age, the same background, the same anything, only that we be brave enough to recognize the divine spark when it appears before us, and wise enough to tend it with all the devotion our hearts can hold." Marina and Julia built a life together that was equal parts challenging and rewarding. They synced the world's questions with grace and their own doubts with honesty. They learned that love between women carries its own unique joys and sorrows, its own particular courage and tenderness. They discovered that age differences matter far less than aligned hearts, that society's approvables beside one's own integrity, and that the magic of authentic connection can transform not just two lives, but everyone those lives touch. Their therapy and magic practice flourished, helping others find their own courage to live authentically. They faced criticism, celebrated victories, weathered storms, and danced in sunshine, always hand in hand, always choosing each other. And late at night, when the world was quiet and they lay entwined in their shared bed, Marina would sometimes marvel at the magnificent accident of standing in that ice cream line on that sweltering July afternoon. But Julia would smile and whisper that it was no accident at all, that the universe always knows exactly what it's doing when it decides to work a little magic. Love, after all, is the greatest illusion of all. It makes us believe that two separate souls can become one while remaining beautifully, perfectly themselves. It makes us believe that happiness is not only possible but deserved. It makes us believe in forever, in magic, and the exquisite courage required to open our hearts completely to another human being. And sometimes, dear ones, if we're very lucky and very brave, love transforms that illusion into the most profound reality we'll ever know. Asterisk, the narrator's voice fades into blessed silence, leaving only the echo of truth and the promise that such love exists for any soul courageous enough to seek it. Asterisk.